Most people think the return is the end of the pain. But sometimes, the return is where the real damage begins, because it convinces you that the pattern changed before anything actually did. They come back. The silence breaks. The message appears. Their tone is softer. They act warmer. They say they missed you, or they act like they missed you, even if they never say the words directly. And because you have been carrying the ache of the distance, that return can feel like proof. Proof that you mattered. Proof that they were thinking about you. Proof that maybe the pain finally meant something. But then a few days pass, or a few weeks pass, and the old pattern starts showing itself again. The same vagueness, the same distance, the same fear of clarity. The same emotional disappearing when the relationship asks for consistency. The same warm moments, followed by the same confusion. And slowly, you realize the part that hurts the most. They came back, but nothing actually changed. This is one of the most painful traps in anxious and avoidant dynamics, because the return does not feel empty. It feels emotional. It feels like movement. But coming back is not the same as changing. A return can restart contact without repairing the pattern. A return can soften the room without making the bond safer. A return can give you relief without giving you a new relationship. And if they come back but the pattern stays the same, you did not get a new relationship. You got another round. If this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for psychology, relationships, and avoidant and anxious attachment patterns, so you stop guessing. That is the brutal truth this video is going to explain. Not because you are foolish for hoping, not because they necessarily felt nothing, but because hope can attach itself to the story of the return while ignoring what actually changed underneath it. The story is what your hope wants to believe. The structure is what your body has to survive. The story says, they came back. The structure asks, did they come back differently? The story says, they missed me. The structure asks, can they stay present when closeness starts requiring something from them? The story says, maybe this time is different. The structure asks, what changed besides their mood? When someone returns after distance, the anxious nervous system often reads the return as evidence of change. It says, if they came back, they must care. If they care, maybe they will do better. If they do better, maybe I can finally rest. And there may be some truth in that. They may care. They may miss you. They may feel guilty. They may feel lonely. But none of that automatically means they have changed the way they handle closeness, conflict, shame, accountability, fear, or emotional pressure. Caring is not the same as capacity. Missing you is not the same as repair. Loneliness is not the same as readiness. A softer tone is not a safer pattern. This is where months disappear, because the return gives your body relief, and relief makes the story feel believable again. The pain drops. The fear quiets. The waiting ends. So your body starts loosening its grip around the old evidence. You remember the warmth. You remember the tenderness. You remember the good parts, because the good parts are finally available again. And when the good parts are available again, the anxious mind starts bargaining. Maybe it was not that bad. Maybe they needed time. Maybe the distance helped them realize what they lost. Maybe I should not bring up the past right away. Maybe if I stay calm this time, we can finally build something. But here is the part that hurts. Sometimes they did not come back because they were ready to repair the relationship. Sometimes they came back because the distance made the relationship feel safe again. The pressure dropped, the loneliness rose, the fear got quieter. And suddenly, they could feel the bond without feeling trapped by it. Distance can make love feel safer to an avoidant nervous system, not because the relationship has changed, but because the responsibility of closeness has temporarily disappeared. When they are far enough away, they can miss you without having to answer to you. They can remember your warmth without having to hold your hurt. They can feel longing without having to sit in the repair conversation. So when they come back, it may feel like a breakthrough to you, but inside them, it may only be relief from their own loneliness. They may not be coming back to fix the relationship. They may be coming back to fix the loneliness that distance created. That does not mean they feel nothing. It means feeling something is not the same as knowing how to build something. A true feeling does not automatically create a true change. Someone can feel your absence and still not know how to repair your pain. Someone can miss the comfort of you and still avoid the responsibility of being consistent with you. Someone can return with emotion and still have the same nervous system defense that made them disappear in the first place. That is why you cannot judge the relationship only by the return. You have to judge it by what happens after the return. What happens when the relief fades? What happens when the bond asks for clarity again? What happens when a hard conversation appears? What happens when you need reassurance? What happens when they feel pressure? What happens when you are not just the person they missed, but the person who has needs, memories, questions, and a body that remembers what happened? That is where the real pattern shows itself. A return is contact. Repair is a changed pattern. A return says, I am here again. Repair says, I understand what happened, and I am willing to do this differently. Returning to connection is often easier than changing the defense that broke the connection. Once they return and closeness becomes real, the same old fear may wake up. The fear of being trapped, the fear of being needed too much, the fear of failing someone, the fear of losing freedom, the fear of being exposed, the fear of a hard conversation. And if they have not learned a new way to deal with that fear, they will often do what they did before. They get vague, they delay, they minimize. They act warm, but avoid clarity. They enjoy the comfort, but avoid the deeper work. And this is where the real cost begins. Every return without repair does not just restart the relationship. It restarts the clock. It gives you a new emotional beginning without a new structure underneath it. So you do not feel like you are losing time. You feel like you are giving the relationship another fair chance. But if the same pattern is still alive, that fair chance becomes another round. A relationship is not changed by a warm moment. It is changed by a different response to the same old trigger. If the old trigger appears and the old response returns, the pattern is still alive. The proof is not that they came back. The proof is what they do when the situation that used to break the relationship happens again. If they used to shut down when you asked for clarity, what happens now when you ask for clarity? If they used to disappear after closeness, what happens now after closeness? If they used to call you too much when you named your needs, what happens now when you name your needs? If they used to give warmth without consistency, what happens now after the warmth returns? That is the real test. Not the first message, not the reunion, not the soft conversation. The real test is whether the relationship can survive reality better than it did before. This is why so many people lose months inside the same loop. They are not waiting because nothing is happening. They are waiting because just enough keeps happening. A message, a soft return, a good day, a half apology, a nostalgic moment, a night where it feels like the old closeness is back. Enough to restart hope, enough to make leaving feel premature, enough to make you say, maybe I should give it more time. But not enough to let your body rest, not enough to create safety, not enough to stop the old pattern from coming back. It does not always give you nothing. It gives you pieces. Pieces of closeness, pieces of warmth, pieces of reassurance, pieces of the person you love. And because the pieces are real, you keep waiting for the whole thing to become real too. But pieces are not a structure. Moments are not a pattern. A good week is not repair if the old wound is still waiting underneath it. The hard parts are where change is proven. Can they stay when you are hurt? Can they listen when they feel ashamed? Can they communicate when they are overwhelmed? Can they say, I need space, without making the connection feel disposable? Can they admit, I handled that badly, without collapsing into defensiveness? Can they care about the impact, not just the intention? That is what change looks like. Change is not a mood. Change is not a reunion. Change is not missing someone at night. Change is a new behavior under old pressure. And this is where hope can turn against you. Not because hope is bad. Hope can be beautiful when it keeps you open to real repair. But hope becomes dangerous when it teaches you to survive on pieces. A good day becomes proof. A soft message becomes proof. A warm tone becomes proof. A few hours of closeness becomes proof. One emotional conversation becomes proof. But if the deeper pattern stays the same, those pieces do not protect you. They only keep you emotionally invested in a relationship that still has no structure underneath it. Every time you accept pieces as proof, the relationship learns it does not have to become whole. The story says, they came back because they love me. They were scared. They needed time. They are trying in their own way. They are not good with feelings. They do not know how to express it. They are overwhelmed. They are avoidant, so this is hard for them. Some of that may be compassionate. Some of that may even be accurate. But if the story is not connected to structure, it can become a beautiful excuse for staying stuck. Structure asks the less romantic questions. What actually changed? What did they name? What did they repair? What do they do now when discomfort appears? What do they do now when the relationship asks for honesty instead of chemistry? The story may soothe you. The structure tells you the truth. And when the story and the structure do not match, believe the structure. Not because feelings are meaningless, but because a relationship is lived through patterns, not explanations. If someone says they missed you, but keeps treating your needs like pressure, the story may sound loving, but the pattern is still unsafe. If someone says they want to try, but refuses to talk about what broke, the words may feel comforting, but the repair is still missing. If someone says they care,
but keeps disappearing when care requires action, the feeling may be real, but the relationship is still unstable. If someone says things will be different, but you still feel like you have to shrink to keep them close, your body is already noticing the truth before your hope is ready to admit it. If they come back, but nothing changes, the relationship did not reset into safety. It reset into the same pattern. And the reason this steals months is because every return gives you a new emotional starting point. You do not feel like you are still in the old cycle. You feel like maybe a new one has begun. The clock seems to restart. You tell yourself, let us see what happens now. Let us not judge too soon. Let us not ruin it. But if the foundation is the same, the new energy only delays the old outcome. A month passes, then 2, then 3. The same confusion returns. The same pullback returns. The same ache returns. The same private bargaining returns.
And suddenly you realize you were not building something new. You were repeating something familiar with more hope attached to it. The time was not stolen all at once. It was taken in small emotional extensions. One more week because they were warm. One more month because they seemed softer. One more chance because they finally said something close to what you needed. So how do you stop losing months inside a return that feels good but changes nothing? You stop asking only, did they come back? And you start asking, what did they come back to do? Did they come back to repair? Or did they come back to feel better? Did they come back to build? Or did they come back to be comforted? Did they come back to change the pattern? Or did they come back because distance became lonely? Did they come back to understand your pain? Or did they come back hoping your relief would make you stop talking about it? These questions are not harsh. They are protective. They stop you from treating every return as a breakthrough. A return is not automatically a second chance. Sometimes it is only the same cycle asking for more time. The return may be emotional. The return may be real. But a real return still has to become a real change. There is a reason anxious attachment struggles here. The anxious body wants a bridge from pain to safety. When the person comes back, it feels like the bridge finally appeared. You do not want to look underneath it and ask whether it is strong. You want to cross. You want to believe. You want to rest. So when they act warm, you may decide to stop checking what actually changed because checking it could threaten the relief. You may think, if I ask for too much, they will leave again. If I bring up the pattern, the softness will vanish. If I need repair, I will become the problem. So you accept the story because the story feels safer than the truth. But the truth is what eventually protects you. Care without change can still hurt you. Longing without repair can still keep you stuck. Missing you is not enough. Coming back is not enough. Feeling guilty is not enough. Saying the right thing in a soft moment is not enough. The pattern has to change. They name what happened. They stop making you drag the truth into the room. They communicate before disappearing. They ask what repair would look like. They stop treating your need for clarity as an attack. They become more honest about what they can actually handle. They tell you when they are overwhelmed instead of vanishing. They show consistency when the reunion high fades.
They do not require you to become smaller so they can feel free. That is repair. Not perfection. Repair. This is why the changed pattern is the proof. Not the return, not the apology, not the mood, not the chemistry, not the familiar warmth. The changed pattern. Does the same trigger produce a different response? Does the same fear lead to more honesty instead of disappearance? Does the same conflict lead to repair instead of distance? Does the same closeness lead to steadiness instead of panic? That is where you look. If they come back and everything feels different for a week, but the same pressure creates the same avoidance, then nothing fundamental has changed. It only paused. And a pause is not a transformation. A pause can feel peaceful. A pause can feel hopeful. A pause can feel like your nervous system finally got oxygen. But if the old pattern is still waiting under the surface, the relationship is not healed. It is only between episodes. Sometimes the pattern keeps repeating not only because they avoid repair, but because your fear of losing the return makes you afraid to ask for repair. That is not blame. That is what anxiety does when relief finally arrives. You were hurting. You were waiting. You were trying to understand the silence, the distance, the mixed signals, the emotional drop. Then they come back, and suddenly the fear gets quieter. The room gets warmer. Your body gets a break. And because the break feels so precious, you become afraid to disturb it. You do not want to ruin the moment. You do not want to bring up the pattern too soon. You do not want to make them feel pressured. You do not want to become the reason they pull away again. So you stay quiet. You tell yourself you will bring it up later. But later often becomes never. Because once the return feels good, the fear of losing it becomes stronger than the need to question it. That is how your silence can accidentally protect the same pattern that hurts you. Silence can keep the peace for a moment, but it can also give the old pattern permission to survive. You are not protecting the relationship when you hide the truth that could repair it. You are protecting the reset.
And a reset that cannot survive the truth is not repair. You cannot heal a pattern you are too afraid to name. You cannot know whether someone has changed if you never let the relationship touch the place where change is required. You only get proof that things can feel good when nothing difficult is being asked. And that is not enough. A relationship that only feels safe when you are silent is not safe. A relationship that only feels warm when you do not need anything is not warm enough to live inside. A relationship that only works when you stop asking for repair is not a repaired relationship. It is the same pattern being protected by your fear of losing the good part. So stop using the warmest moment as evidence of the whole relationship. Stop letting relief write the future. Stop asking, "Did they come back?" as if that is the final answer. Start asking, "Did anything change after they came back? Do I feel safer or only relieved? Do I feel clearer or only hopeful? Do I feel more able to be myself, or am I performing calmness again? Do we talk about hard things more honestly, or do we still move around them? Do they repair with behavior, or only return with emotion?" Your body will often know.
It will know in the tightness that comes back after the first relief fades. It will know in the way you rehearse simple questions. It will know in the way you hide your disappointment so you do not disturb the peace. That does not mean every fear is fact, but it does mean your body is watching the structure, not just the story. So what do you do with this? You do not need to punish someone for coming back. You do not need to reject every return. You do not need to become cold, dramatic, or suspicious. But you do need to stop handing out full trust to a pattern that is not changed yet. You can receive the return slowly. You can notice the warmth without letting it erase the past. You can say, "I am glad we are talking, but I also need to see what changes." You can say, "I do not want to repeat the same cycle where we reconnect and then avoid the same issue." You can say, "Coming back matters, but what matters more is what we do differently now." And then you watch. Not obsessively, not anxiously, clearly. Do their actions become more consistent? Do their words become more honest? Do hard moments become safer? Do you become more yourself, not less? That is the repair check. If the answer is no, you do not have to argue with reality. You can grieve the fact that they returned without changing. You can admit that the contact was real, the feeling was real, the hope was real, but the structure was still not safe. You can recover from missing someone. You can recover from disappointment. You can recover from the pain of accepting the truth. But you cannot get back the months you keep giving to the same pattern, hoping this time the ending will change. This is not only about whether they came back. This is about how much of your life disappears every time a return convinces you to ignore the pattern. It disappears in waiting. It disappears in overthinking. It disappears in performing calmness. It disappears in hoping the warm version of them will finally become the steady version of them. And while you are waiting for the relationship to become safe, your nervous system is paying the price. Coming back is not the same as changing. The return is not the proof. The changed pattern is the proof. A real second chance does not ask you to forget the first damage. A real second chance makes room for what happened, names what needs to change, and builds a safer pattern with you. If they come back and the same pattern comes back with them, you are not being offered a new relationship. You are being offered another round. And you are allowed to say no to another round. You are allowed to want repair, not just reunion. You are allowed to want consistency, not just contact. You are allowed to want honesty, not just warmth. You are allowed to want a relationship where the story and what actually happens finally match. That does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop letting care become a reason to abandon the evidence. It means you let the return be the beginning of observation, not the end of discernment.
And if the old pattern returns, you do not have to keep calling it confusion. You can call it information. The relationship has shown you what it can currently hold. Maybe one day they will change. Maybe one day they will grow. Maybe one day they will learn how to repair. But your life cannot live inside maybe forever. Your nervous system cannot build safety on future potential while your present body keeps hurting. So the question is not only, do they come back? The question is,
what comes back with them? Does repair come back with them? Does honesty come back with them? Does consistency come back with them? Does accountability come back with them? Or does the same distance, the same vagueness, the same fear of clarity, the same old disappearing come back, wearing a softer mood? That is what you have to see. Because when you see it clearly, you stop being trapped by the emotional high of the return. You stop losing months to another reset that feels like hope but functions like delay. You stop trying to survive on pieces and start looking for the pattern your body can actually live inside. The final truth is this: if they come back but nothing changes, you are not crazy for still feeling unsafe. Your body is noticing that the story changed for a moment, but the structure stayed the same. And until the structure changes, your nervous system will keep waiting for the old ending. You deserve more than another round. You deserve repair that does not require you to beg for it. You deserve clarity that does not disappear when closeness gets real. You deserve a bond where warmth is supported by behavior, where apologies are supported by change, and where love does not keep asking you to donate more months to the same pain. Coming back is not the same as changing. The return is not the proof. The changed pattern is the proof. If this helped your body feel a little safer, liking this video helps it reach someone else who needs this clarity. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.